Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm going to run through the solution for 21-12, so problem 12 in chapter 21. And if you'll remember from the last video, I'm working in one workbook and I'm adding a new tab for each of the solutions for 10 through 16. Okay, so I've added a new tab here for 21-12 and we'll get started. So what we're asked to do is average the number of units sold the number of units of foundation sold by Emily. So we have a couple of variables to define here. So we'll start with the sales rep and the product. So our sales rep in this case is Emily. I'm going to use the trick that I've used before where I go back to the data and I find that sales rep's name and I copy it from here. That avoids any confusion around misspelling or typos. Okay. And the product in this case is foundation. Okay, good. Now we need to calculate the average units sold. Oops. I'm going to format this. So we're going to use an average ifs with an S on the end. So I'm going to go ahead and type average ifs. And so we want Excel to average the number of units sold based on two criteria. We want Excel to go and look at all the products sold by Emily and then all of the foundation sold by Emily and average only those units. Okay, so the range where we want Excel to go and look is in the named range units. So we can click F3 here and it will bring up all of the names, the named ranges that we have created. Okay. Now we want Excel to, the first criteria we're going to dictate to Excel is around the sales rep's name. So I'm going to click click F3 here. And I want Excel to go and look in that named range called sales rep. And in that named range, look for this name. Okay. Now I'm going to enter my second criteria. I want Excel to go look in the product range. Let's see, product. And in that range, I want Excel to locate foundation. I'm going to close my bracket. There we go. The average number of units sold. The average number of foundation units sold by Emily is 42.9. Okay, so that solves 21-12. Okay, let's look at the solution for 21-13. So I've added a new tab in my Excel workbook and I've named it 21-13. And what we're asked to do here is return the average dollar size of a foundation sale made by Betsy after the end of 2004. So we have 3 variables that we need Excel to work through. So let's define those variables here. First of all, sales rep, product, and year. And in this case, we want a year that is greater than what we're naming here. So the sales rep in this case is Betsy. So I'm going to go find her name here. Paste it in place. Foundation, that's what we need. That's the same one that we used last time, so I'm going to just copy it from there. And we are asked to return after the end of 2004. So I'll format this. Oops. Average dollars sold. So I'd like to call something out to you. When we're creating this statement, notice that we're not typing in the word Betsy or the word foundation or even the year 2004. Instead, what we're doing is defining those variables. That's what I've done right here. And then when we create our statement, we're referring to a particular cell. Okay, and that is one of our best practices. So keep that in mind to always do that. You don't want to define a variable directly in your formula. Okay. The reason for that is, imagine the scenario changes. So imagine we're no longer interested in Betsy's sales, but we want to look at CC's sales, or instead of foundation, we want to look at a different product. Okay, in that case, we can very quickly change those variables by updating right here instead of trying to understand how we've defined our formula. Okay, so we need to do another average ifs, with an S on the end. In this case, we have 3 criteria. So let's get started with that. IFS. So in this case, we're not looking for units, we're looking for dollars. Okay, so the average sales dollars. I'm going to use F3 here and look at my named ranges, and I want dollars. Okay, so I'm telling Excel that's what we're going to perform the operation on. So the next thing we need to do is let's define the sales rep. So again, I'm using F3 and I've named that range sales rep. And within sales rep, I want Excel to go and find this name, Betsy. Notice I'm not typing Betsy, I'm clicking on the cell B1 where I have defined that variable. Okay. Next, let's define or set the criteria around the product of foundation. So I'll click F3, product, say okay. I want Excel to go and find foundation. Okay. And then the next thing is around the year. So I'll click F3 and I'll click year column. Now here's where we get to use the tip that was presented in class. So we want to use an operator. So we want a greater than symbol. So I need to start with an open quote. Okay. So I've typed in the open quote. Now I want greater than, and that's the operator. So I need to close that statement with another quote mark. Okay, so I want the year column greater than 2004, but I need something that connects the operator, the greater than, to the variable. And I use an ampersand sign, and in my own mind, I call it the and sign, and I just typed it in there. Now I refer to the year, and I close my quote. So just before I leave this part, let's take another look at what I did. So I asked Excel to refer to the year column in my data tab, and I want Excel to do this operation. Greater than, and I put quote marks around the greater than. I connect using an ampersand or an and sign, and then I clicked on the year, which in this case was contained in B3. Notice in this formula, I have not typed in the specific variables. I have not typed in Betsy, I have not typed in foundation or 2004. Instead, I'm referring to the cells where I have defined those variables. Let's click enter and see if it works. And it does. So the average dollars sold were $157.98. That should actually round to 99. So I'm going to format this as a dollar because it is. And I think it's appropriate to leave the 2 decimal points. That makes sense to me. Put a box around this so we know it's our answer. Okay, and that completes the solution for 21-13. Okay, let's look at the solution for 21-14. Remember, I'm building on the same workbook, so I'm just adding a tab for each of these because they all pertain to the same data set. So 2114 says, in transactions which Ashley sold at least 40 units of lipstick, what is the total dollar amount? So lots of variables here. First one is the sales rep. So we're told that we're looking for the sales rep, Ashley. Oops. We're also given the product, which is lipstick. And then finally, we need units, which are greater than 40. So the sales rep that I'm after is Ashley. You don't actually have to do this trick that I'm doing. If you're very confident in your ability to spell properly and type properly, you go ahead and type it in. This is just what I do to remove that concern for me. Okay. And let's format this. So in this case, transactions in which, what is the total dollar amount? So this is the dollar amount. Oops. So in this case, we're going to use a sum ifs because we have more than one variable. We have 3 variables that we're going to work with today. So let's get started. Sum IFS. So we need to sum the dollars. So I'm going to click F3 and that brings up the various named ranges that I have defined. So dollars. First criteria, let's define the sales rep. Again, I'm clicking F3 and I will select sales rep. And the sales rep name I want is Ashley. I'm not typing Ashley, I'm referring to the cell where I have defined those variables. Next, we need to select the criteria of product being lipstick. So I'll click F3 and select the product. And in this case, it's lipstick. Then we get to do another one of those cool formulas. So in this case, we want Excel to go take a look at units sold. And so that's the criteria range. And then the criteria itself will be anything greater than 40. So click F3 and select units, comma. So here's where we use the quotation marks around the operator. The operator is the greater than sign. So quote mark, greater than, close quote mark. Okay, so the quotes surround the operation, which is greater than. Now we need to connect that to our variable. So we use the and sign, which is technically and correctly called the ampersand, but I think of it as the and sign. And now we can click this cell and we can close the bracket. So note in this formula, none of the variables are defined directly in the formula. Okay, they're all pertaining or referring to a cell where I have defined the where I've defined the variables. Okay, let's click enter. There we go. That's the average dollar amount sold. So let's define this as a dollar value. Okay. So that's the solution for 2114. Okay, let's take a look at the solution for 21-15. In this case, we are asked to create a table that contains sales of each product made by each person. So let's see how to do that. So first of all, we need to start with each person's name. So let's take a look at the data. It's hard to get a list of every person's name without missing somebody. We'd have to scroll all the way down and go through all of this data, and that would take a long time. But I know what we can do instead. So what I'm going to do is copy only the sales rep name. So I've highlighted column B. So if you highlight the letter, you can select the entire column. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it right over here. So now I have all of the sales reps names. And so I'm most of the way there. So one of the tools that we can use, it is a data validation tool, is if you click on remove duplicates right here, it deletes duplicate rows from a sheet. You can pick which columns should be checked for duplicate information. So I want to remove all the duplicates. I want to be left with just each sales rep's name. So I've clicked on it and it says to delete duplicate values, select one or more columns that contain duplicates. You can advise if your data has headers, and ours does, sales rep name. So I'm going to click OK. So there are 9 unique values that remain, and here are all of the sales reps' names. Okay, so that's the way we can fine tune this list and just get the sales reps' names. Excuse me, get all of the sales reps' names, avoiding duplicates and making sure that we don't miss anyone. Okay. So we have our sales rep name, and then let's look at the dollar volume. So we're going to use a sum if statement. Okay. Because we just really have one criteria. We want to pull all of the sales dollars for a particular rep. So here I'm clicking F3, and what I want Excel to go and search on is the sales rep name. That's the range. Okay. The value that I am looking for is right here. Betsy in this case, but notice I'm not typing the name Betsy. I'm just referring to A2. And what I want to have summed are the dollar value of the sales. So F3, and I'll select dollars, and I can close the bracket. So let's copy this down. Good. So let's add all of this up. I'm just going to use the sum function. So let's make this red and bold so we know it's a sum. And let's call this dollar value, or let's format this as a dollar value. Now let's just do a double check. And I'm going to call this sum double check. And in this case, I want to sum all of the dollar sales from my data sheet. So I'm going to click F3 and pick dollars. So in B11, I've done a sum of all of the data on this sheet. Now my check is to do a sum of all of the dollars from the data sheet, and they should be the same number. Let's see if they are. They are, perfect. If they were not, that would mean one of two things. Either we've missed a sales rep name or duplicated a sales rep name, or we have an error in our formula. Okay. So if we take a look at the question, we're actually asked to create a table that contains the sales of each product by each person. And so we can do that as well. So let's go back to the data and look at the products. I'm going to do exactly the same trick as I did for the sales reps. I'm going to copy this, drop it in here. So we have all of the products now, but what I really want to do is remove all the duplicates. I just want each product listed once. So along the top, I'll make sure I'm in my data ribbon, and in data tools, right in the middle is remove duplicates. I'm going to use that again. Okay, my data row does have headers, so I'll click that and then I'll say OK. Okay. So I'm going to move this over. Oops. And I'm going to drop the products along the top here. So I'll move them over. So we've got sales rep name slash product along the other side. So now we're going to use a very similar statement, except we need a sum ifs statement because we're going to define two variables, okay? And those two variables are the sales rep's name and the product. Okay. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to use a sum ifs statement. So first of all, we want to perform this on the dollars named range. So I'm going to click F3 and select dollars. The first variable that I want to define is the sales rep's name. So F3 and I'll select sales rep. And the sales rep's name should be Betsy, but instead of typing Betsy, I'm going to refer to the cell A2. And the reason I'm going to do that is I can copy this down, and A2 is a relative reference. And so when I am in B3, it will refer to A3 and so on and so forth. So now we're looking for the sales rep Betsy. The next thing we want to do is look specifically for the product's lip gloss. So click F3, pick product. And I'm going to click up here to lip gloss and close the bracket. Now, there is an error in this formula. And see if you can see it right now and call it out on your own. And if you can, go ahead and fix it. And if you're not sure, when I copy this down, I think you'll see the error. Didn't work. It said these sales reps didn't sell any lip gloss. Let's click on the formula and see. When you click on the formula, it highlights the cells. Now we can see the problem. B2 should have been locked in place, because what's happening is we're copying the formula down. We do want the sales rep name to copy down, but we don't want this lip gloss, this reference to the lip gloss to move. So we can fix that. I'm going to go up to this top formula here in B2. And if you click on B1 and up along the top, you should have F keys. Click on F4. When you click on F4, it locks that cell reference. So let's copy it down now. Okay, we'll click down here and see. You can see now the sales rep name is copying down, but the lip gloss part is not. Okay, and that's exactly what we want. Okay. But as we look at this data, we now realize that what we would ideally like to do is copy this formula over. We probably don't want to rewrite that formula. Whoops. Made an error here. So what we would like to be able to do is copy the formula over. When I do that, let's look at the formula. That's not quite what I was expecting to have happen. So ideally, what I think I would like to have is the sales rep locking in place when I go across, but shifting downward when I move my copy down. That's what I would really like, and we can achieve that using cell locking functions. So A2, I want to have lock in place as I move across a row, but as I move down in the column, I want it to move down with me. So we can put a dollar value sign to lock the column or the row. And if you're not sure which is which, you can experiment. So I'm going to put a dollar sign in front of A. So I am trying to lock in place A2. Okay. And let's just test it and see what happens. Okay. So A2 is locking in place, but now unfortunately, I also have lip gloss locking in place. So that worked really well here, but it did not work so well when I wanted to go across. So let's remove this absolute value and change it to be just the lip gloss, and think about where could we put our dollar sign to have it lock in place. And let's do the same thing that we did for the sales rep. So I'm going to put the dollar sign in front of B. And now let's copy this across. Doesn't look like it worked. Let's see. Nope, it's locking it in place. So let's remove, oops, I'll go back here. Let's remove the dollar sign from in front of the B and put it in front of the 1. And let's try now. And now it's changing. So when I look at the eyeliner, for example, I see that my formula is referring to the sales rep name, and that's exactly what I wanted to have happen. And it's also referring to the appropriate product, and that's how I wanted it to work. So let's copy this formula down. Okay, and we can copy all of these formulas down. Now, let's check our work, okay? So this column actually totaled up all of the sales dollars for a particular rep. So this was actually a check. We did our check first. Now let's sum up all of these dollar values, and it should be the same as this. So let's try. Happy day, it certainly is. Okay, let's check all the way down though. Okay, and we'll format this as dollars. So it does match. We could do the same we can total up these figures and see if they also match. Let's do that now. Use the sum function. So we don't have anything specific to check these two, but what we can do is total them up, and it should equal this $240,000 number. Let's see. In fact, it does. So we have a perfect match. So we've now completed the exercise of totaling up. We've created a table that contains sales of each product made by each person. So let's make it look nice. So we'll make it a dollar value. These checks that we performed, we don't need to include them. It doesn't make sense to the reader that we have two total columns. I think that would be very confusing. So I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to get rid of this. But I will format the totals in red, and that's so that the reader knows that we're looking at a total and not just part of the cell. Excuse me, not just part of the table. Okay. And now we'll just tidy it up a little bit here. Okay, so that completes 21.5. And the next exercise that we're going to do is 2116. Just a moment and we'll switch to that. Okay. So now for 2116, what we're asked to do is create a table that when you enter a year in your worksheet contains sales of each product by each person during that year. So it looks very much like this, except we can enter in a specific year. So we can use this very spreadsheet and add in another variable for year. And so I'm going to copy this. So I'm going to right click on it and create a copy. Whoops, I moved it all the way over here. So I'm going to call this 2116. So we could go down here and say year, and then you could allow the user to enter whichever year they wanted to. For fun, let's start with 2004. And then we could update our sum if to include that variable. So F3, year column, okay, comma. Now remember, we use quote marks around our operator. In this case, the operator is equal. So quote, equal, quote, and then I want to connect to the cell, ampersand, put in the year. I'm going to click F4 because I want to lock it in place and hit enter. Okay, and I can copy that all the way down. And I can copy it all the way over. And then the problem with my dollar value is I used a lookup of the entire title, excuse me, of the entire data set instead of summing this table. So I can fix this formula. Need a sum formula of the data in the table. Okay. And these sum the data in the table. Perfect. So I can change the year 2005 and it updates. And so this is a perfect illustration of why you don't want to define the variable in your formula. So if I defined it in here, instead of saying year column, instead I put the number 2004 here. Then if I was asked to change it to 2008, 2007, and so on, I'd have to go into each and every cell to update it. It's much easier if I were to change it right here. Let's see, 2010. No data for 2010. 2000, no data for 2000. I forget what year the data set. 2007. Let's check. I forget. 2004, 5, and 6. So I'll pick one of those options. 2005. There we go. And the data populates. So that's the technical solution for 2116. But this is not actually the way I would solve the problem that we've been given. So the way I would solve the problem is I would use a pivot table. So let's go back to our data. Let's name this whole sheet. So I'm going to use this whole data set. I'm going to use Control Shift. Okay, and I will call this, I'll just call it data set. Let's go back here. I'll call this 21-16 ALT alternate. Okay. So along the top ribbon here, click Insert and choose Pivot Table. The range is data set. Okay, and let's say okay. Okay, does not look like it's going to be very helpful, but it is. So take a look here and you will see all of the columns that are included in our data. Okay, and you also see a grid down here that allows us to define rows, columns, and how we're going to sum or value that data. So we know that we want to have our sales rep name in the rows. So I'm going to click on sales rep name and I'm going to hold it and drag it into place under rows. And when I do that, look at what happens on the spreadsheet. So can you remember the steps that we took to get those names when we did it the first way? Okay, we copied the names from the data set and we removed the duplicates. It took a fair bit of time to do that. Also, if there are any changes made to that data set, they would not be updated in our table that we created using the sum ifs. Okay. The next thing that we want to include are the columns along the top. We want product, so I'm going to take that and drag it to the column section. And when I do that, watch what happens to the spreadsheet. There they are. Now, our spreadsheet is blank because Excel is not sure what it is that I want to add up. So I want to add up dollars. So I'll drop this into my values section. There we go. Okay, so now we have that table and it was very quick and easy to make it using a pivot table. Remember how much time it took and how much fiddling we had to do to make sure that our formulas were right and the double checking to make sure that the data matched the data set. And so what we want to be able to do is for a given year, we want to be able to filter by year. And so see this box down here, a filter, take the year and drag it into the filter section. When I do that, watch what happens on the spreadsheet. I can now select which year, and I don't have to guess what years are acceptable options. So remember before I said, oh, I wonder if I can check 2010 or 2000. I can see that that's not a viable option. Okay, so you can click whatever year you want and it updates this data. We can format our pivot table, and we should, dollar value. And we can also, and we should update these titles, sum of dollars, column labels, row labels. Okay, so we can call this sales rep. Okay, and over here, we can call this product name. And this is sales dollars by rep, by sales rep, by product. Okay, and when we come back after Student Success Week, we're going to learn more about pivot tables and we'll learn about best practices for pivot tables. But I think this was a really good example to demonstrate how quick and easy pivot tables make this type of analysis. Just think about how quick we were able to create this table versus how long it took us here. Okay. Good, so that's the solution for 2116.